Conventional wisdom says you should pay off your mortgage before you retire. In this episode, we'll dissect that and help you figure out by the end of this episode what's best for you. We'll be talking about the pros and cons, as well as the latest research on happiness and more as it relates to mortgages. Hi, I'm Bridget Sullivan-Mermel, and I've got a fee-only financial planning practice in Chicago, Illinois.
And I'm John Shearer. I have a fee-only financial planning practice in Middleton, Wisconsin. And before we get started, Bridget, I want to remind viewers to hit that subscribe button. By subscribing, you help other people find this valuable information. So appreciate that. Go ahead and pound the subscribe button there. And then let's get on with talking about mortgages, right? I love, conventional wisdom says, right? I need to have my mortgage paid off in retirement. I know we have some different viewpoints on that, and I'm just interested. Tell me a little about, you've done some research. What I love about these conversations is I get to find out what you actually say to clients, right? Yeah. You find out, and right, like, oh, this is really interesting and fun for me. So what do you tell your clients about having your mortgage paid off?
Well, I tell people that there's two elements to this decision. There's an emotional element and there's an intellectual element. And I can make intellectual arguments all day long, all day and all night about why keeping a mortgage while you're retired is the best thing to do. And for some people, they think, okay, great, I'm being smart, I'll do it. And then we just call it a day, right?
Good. End of discussion, right? Mortgages are great. Good. Problem solved.
Yeah, and again, I can go over all the numbers and show you why it's better. But for some people, they aren't going to not sleep well at night if that's what they have. They just want their mortgage paid off. And I have stopped trying to convince them, and I have just said, okay, great, how are we going to do this? I think it's better to wait as long as possible to pay off your mortgage. So I'm happier to have somebody pay off their mortgage when they're 65 versus when they're 45. But paying it off, then if it helps you sleep at night, I'm okay with it now. The other thing is that I've recently been doing some research on subjective well-being and retirement and net worth. And it turns out...
This is what you do for fun? I just need to take a pause there. Really? Okay, all right. Subjective well-being. Let's talk about that.
Subjective well-being. So that's otherwise known as happiness.
Okay.
Okay. So the researchers have found that having a mortgage paid off makes people feel better. It increases their happiness. So, and even if the same person has this house and for non-financial reasons decides to rent instead, like move and rent, their well-being is happier. Like they try to, take out control for all the different issues. And it's like there's something about owning a home and not having a mortgage that makes people feel happier.
That's interesting. I love that idea, and we take maybe a little different tactical approach to how we advise clients on this. But I love that idea of what does it mean for you, right? And money, as you were describing this, Bridget, I thought, well, of course, money is a tool, right? Money doesn't make me happy. It's being able to take a vacation makes me happy, or having a house that's paid off, right? It's just this tool to get there. I think that's a really important factor in all this. As I think about this discussion, should I pay my mortgage off? It's a math decision, right? It's an economic. Well, the merits of paying off versus not, and there's a lot of debate in our world about, well, should you or shouldn't you? And I think that we're on the same page that mathematically, and I can prove to you, it is not a question of whether it's a better financial deal or not to have a mortgage. A long-term fixed mortgage is way better financial deal. What I say to people is that spreadsheets don't sleep at night, right? Listen, you want to have a math debate about how this goes? Like it's irrefutable in my mind that having a long-term fixed mortgage makes sense. I think that my clients and people and our viewers should understand that math, right? People think that I should have my mortgage paid off. Why? Well, because you're supposed to pay off your mortgage. Why? Because they say you're supposed to pay off your mortgage in retirement. Like, no. Let's look at the math and think about, here's the facts, right? Here's how this thing works, and we can talk about that. And then, if you make a decision and say, yep, those are the facts, that's great, you know what? I'd like to have my mortgage paid off. Totally cool, right? But you know the decisions. My problem, the big problem I have is that so many people make this decision. I want to get my mortgage paid off. I want to get my mortgage paid off as quickly as possible. You mentioned, hey, it's different at 45 than 65, right? And without thinking of, here are the alternatives. I'm being the math guy. I've got a long-term fixed mortgage. We got a 3% mortgage, and for the next 25 years or however long it goes out yet, I'm paying 3%. So some of this math behind it is look at inflation today, right? I bonds are some of our favorite investments these days, right? I've got I bonds that are now paying me 9.6%.
Right.
And my mortgage cost me 3%. So instead of taking that money and putting it into my mortgage, I'm earning 9% here. I'm paying
Right.
3% there. I'm 6% ahead. That makes sense to me, right?
That adds up over decades.
Right. So this is the economics and inflation. My mortgage is whatever it is, $1,000 a month. It's going to be $1,000 a month in 5 years, and $1,000 a month in 10 years, and in 20 years. And what's the price of a gallon of gas? What's the price of a loaf of bread going to be in 20 years? More than it is today, probably, right? So there's these economic reasons why I can point to this makes sense. But then again, from my standpoint, I go, great, I embrace that. Makes sense. I want to get into that. For other people to say, oh yeah, that makes sense. That's really nice. But you know what? That's not what makes me feel good. Right? All these decisions, it's sort of like, I don't know, buying a vehicle. You can spend $100,000 on a car or $20,000. It still gets you from here to there. But it's how do you value these things and making, we call them intentional decisions in our world. Hey, if you're being intentional about, I want to pay my mortgage off, here's the math. That's great. I can incorporate that into my thinking. Here's my math and here's my feelings and which is more important. That to me is the ultimate thing, and that's what I heard you describing. Is like, listen, well, how does it work for you, and not just how the spreadsheet works.
Right, and I think another interesting aspect is that sometimes spouses disagree. Mm-hmm. Like, because I think that it comes down to this question of, are you willing to assume the risk of having money in the stock market, mm-hmm. even though we as financial advisors will tell you, yeah, but if you go over decades, and actually even if you're 65, we think you're going to live till 85 probably, so that's decades, mm-hmm. right? That the risk is really much lower. But that doesn't necessarily make people sleep at night. Some people, they're like, great, that means I'll be able to spend more when I retire if I don't pay off my mortgage. Mm-hmm. According to your calculations, we say, yeah, you'll be able to spend more if you do that. Okay, then they're like, okay, great, I'll do that, Right. But other people are like, I don't care. I want to be, it doesn't make me feel I'm not going to, I know I don't feel comfortable with it. And so it's like, okay, great. The other thing is that this is debated in our industry. So when we get a bunch of financial planners together, this is something that we debate about. And interestingly, people's attitudes can change as they get older. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I know one person in particular that we're both friends with whose attitude changed. Yeah. And that person actually, started approaching retirement, and they had multiple properties, and they wanted it all paid off.
Yeah, well, I'll give a personal example on this. We owned a duplex here in town, and we still own a farm west of town where we do some hunting and different things. And a few years back, I sold the duplex. I was ready to get out of that business, and mathematically, having a long-term fixed mortgage on my farm property makes sense for all the same reasons that I have a mortgage on my house at 3%.
Right.
And I was in a spot where our kids were younger, and I just, I took the profits, I paid off the farm mortgage. Does not make economic sense, right? Counterintuitive, but you know what? Just not having to deal with it, right? It's a person, and you go like, okay, right. Even people like me who are these, let's optimize our portfolio and taxes, blah, blah. Like, no, there's other factors that make a difference in there.
Yeah, well, the other thing is that you have to be, if you're married or have a partner, you need to have a agreement with your spouse.
Right.
So you can have a situation where two people have different points of view on this. One person is like, of course, keep it in the market. Keep the money in the market. Have a mortgage. Who cares? Mm-hmm. And the other person is like, what are you talking about? I've now that I'm over 60, I know that the market goes down. And I don't want to do that with my retirement. Mm-hmm. I want to take the least risk possible. So then you have to kind of come to an agreement or some sort of compromise on it. And one potential compromise can be, okay, we'll have a 30-year mortgage, but it'll be low. Right. Like we don't have to have our house fully leveraged. It'll be a smaller amount.
Right. Right. That makes a ton
So
of
it doesn't
sense.
have to be an all or nothing situation. That's what I'm saying.
The other thing I just like to address when it comes to the public perception, the conventional wisdom that, geez, if you don't have this mortgage payment, your cash flow is so much greater in retirement and all these things. And there certainly is some validity to that. The example I always use is my parents. They bought the house that we just sold for my dad back in 1978, and their mortgage was the payment was $155 a month. I remember that, right? And which, right. But when you're a teacher making $8,000 or $10,000 a year, it was a boatload of dough then, right? And so, they got in right before interest rates got really high in the 80s. Some of us remember that. And so my wife and I were living here in Middleton in the mid 1990s. 20 years later, we were paying $750 for a 2-bedroom apartment, which was a decent deal at the time. And my dad was retiring at this time. So what was his mortgage payment in 1995? $155, right? And you talk about, and again, your mileage may vary, right? It's this one situation, but you go, listen, if you're going to be in a house, one of the things, are you going to be in this house for a long time? That makes a difference. Are you planning to move every 5 years? That's another decision. I mean, all these decision factors that go into it. But if you're going to be someplace for a long time, was he really worried about having $155 a month in mortgage when a current 2-bedroom apartment goes for $7 or $750? Right? Like, no, because of this inflation factor. So what my $1,000 a month mortgage today, in 20 years when my kids are renting an apartment, and they're not going to be renting an apartment for $1,000 a month, I'll tell you that, right? Or whatever the math is on this. And so it's not just this automatic, like, oh, who wants that burden? I think that's a feeling we have, this burden of having a mortgage payment. Yeah, I might not want to have it for various reasons. Right? And if my alternative is, well, geez, I'm going to spend this money or pay off my mortgage, that's another decision factor, right? But it's one of those things that the conventional wisdom isn't always what it is, and I really appreciate this idea. Maybe the biggest takeaway is spreadsheets don't have to sleep at night, right? Like, you need to be able to feel comfortable with your decision and know your options. So,
great way to wrap it up.
Yeah.
I'm Bridget Sullivan-Mermel. I've got a fee only financial planning practice in Chicago, Illinois.
And I'm John Shear. I run a fee-only financial planning practice in Middleton, Wisconsin. If you like what you hear on our show, Friends Talk Financial Planning, please check out the Alliance of Comprehensive Planners. Both Bridget and I are members of ACP, and you can find other advisors in your area who think like us by visiting acplanners.org.
And don't forget to subscribe.
That's
and with
right.
that, we'll wrap it up.